There were 4 AT bases.
Yeah.
I was tasked to do 3 of them. I never did the one in the Pyrenees. I did the other 3. General Stubblebine, the head of the Intelligence and Security Command, had officers looking for psychic events. And a little bit later, General Stubblebine came out to the field station and they called me into the office. And he got right up in my face and scowled. "Did you kill my computers with your mind?" I was going to lie about it. And I said, "Yes, sir, I did." If you've ever seen the movie The Men Who Stare at Goats, the grin that comes across General Hapgood's face is exactly the grin that came across
Wow.
General Stubblebine's face. And he said, "Far effing out, have I ever got a job for you?" I was up at the DIA and headed toward the director's office, and 2, quote, men in black stepped out in the hallway, pointed in. I went in, sat down in front of the interrogator. I don't know if I should talk about this or not, but I think I will.
Unless you are brand new to the channel, by this point you are well aware. Between the 1970s and 1990s, the military and intelligence agencies trained psychic spies to pierce the veil of Soviet secrecy and space and time through the practice of remote viewing. But this story gets even more novel, even richer, when you start speaking with the individuals involved. Because some of said psychic spies not only peered into enemy bunkers, but places far stranger, far more esoteric, like, for instance, apparent concealed UFO bases. And some, or at least in the case of Sergeant First Class Lyn Buchanan, encountered the notorious Men in Black. And believe it or not, Lyn's story goes even further, beyond remote viewing UFOs, beyond encountering the Men in Black, all the way up to piloting a UFO himself. Yes, this one goes out there, I guess, even by my standards, but that is what Sergeant First Class Lyn Buchanan says he experienced. Of course, he was a member of the classified Stargate program at Fort Meade, meaning he is part of a very small fraternity of pioneers in remote viewing. He outlines that story and much more in his fantastic book, The Seventh Sense, which is truly well-written and entertaining read that is a must procure for anybody interested in these topics. And speaking of these topics, let's get into them. But first, do me a small favor. Dedicate just a tiny drip of your personal pneuma to tickling the algorithm. Like, subscribe, comment, share, whatever it is you can do on whatever platform you are listening on. I would truly, truly appreciate it. Quick update on the YouTube members only section and patreon.com/third eye drops. I actually just uploaded a conversation I had with another member of the Project Stargate fraternity, our beloved Paul Smith. More members only /patron content is in the queue, so now is a lovely time to initiate yourself. And speaking of initiations, let us initiate this mind meld. Lyn Buchanan, it's really an honor, my friend. I'm so excited to sit down with you to rap with you today. Like I was just telling you before we started recording, I was aware of you. If you dig back into the history of Stargate remote viewing and the whole era at Fort Meade, you're going to see the name Lyn Buchanan. You're going to come across your book. So
Yeah.
I was familiar with you, but then our mutual friend Adam Curry spoke of you specifically as somebody who is really influential and impressive to him early on in
Good.
his own explorations into psi. So immediately I was like, please connect me with Lyn because I would love to talk to that man. So excited, man.
Yeah, I don't advertise a lot or get out and toot my horn or anything, and so uh, people hear about the other people, but you know, my name just sort of falls in the background, and that's fine for me. Um, what I want is to get a bunch of good remote viewers going, um, and get them famous for what they do.
Hmm.
I've already done my stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would love to talk to you about the legacy of remote viewing and how you feel about the state of things with remote viewing at some point in the conversation. But you do have a really fun origin story, my friend. Like and just this early history of yours with strange occurrences, sort of psychokinetic
Oh
events that
yeah.
could be called uh, ESP, I guess, broadly related events. So I would love for you to just kind of tell your origin story.
Yeah. When I was about 12 years old, I started having PK events. You've heard of poltergeist children? You
Hmm.
know, they get upset and things fall off shelves and all that. That's actually a lot more common than most people know about. But when it starts happening, their parents generally find some way to stop it or uh, naysay it and all that, and they give it up. My mother actually encouraged it. And so I am the kind of person who databases, I get curious about everything and all that. So when it first started happening, I started taking notes and keeping documents and trying all these different things and working it out and seeing if I could hone it and perfect it, get it working better. And it happened. And I got pretty good at it. And then one day, my life is a lot like Charlie Brown's. There was the cute little redheaded girl, you know, and so I was showing off to her, and she was very impressed, and went home and told her father, the Pentecostal preacher. And the next day, I was walking home from school, and he and three of his deacons met me on the sidewalk, and he said, you know, just friendly as he could be, I hear you can do these tricks, and I would really like to see one and all that. And so I said, okay, you know, and showed him one, and immediately he and the deacons had me just thrown me down on the sidewalk and pressing my head into the sidewalk, screaming for Satan to come out of me and all this other stuff. Scared me half to death. And and that made me start hiding it.
Yeah.
And I've hidden it almost all my life, but at certain times it comes out. And, you know, when I get angry, so I usually just laugh things off. I don't, I try to never get angry.
Does that still happen, or is it something that you've kind of learned to how to
No,
contain?
it still happens at times
Wow.
when I get, you know, um, angry or something like that. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And then, I mean, stop me if there are stories in the interim that you do want to share, but one of these events happens to you while you're in the military, and then this sort of like changes the trajectory of your life, right?
Oh, it did. Yeah. Um, I had been selected. There were two of us programmers who were vying for the position to write a program that would tie the intelligence computers of 12 different military countries' militaries, um, together to share intelligence information. And I got the I got the job. Uh, Took me like 6 or 7 months to write the program, and the day came when I was to show the program to all the commanding generals of the 12 different countries, and I set everything up and got it ready. I went to the bathroom to make sure my hair was perfectly combed and there were no wrinkles in my uniform and everything else. I came back and did my little song and dance to introduce the program and all. Turned around and hit the enter key, and the computer went dead. And everybody started laughing at me. And I turned around, and this other sergeant was at the back door of the room, said, "Gotcha," and turned around and walked off. I got flaming mad. And when I did, the basically the field station went dead. And I knew what I had done, but I also knew that we could blame it on him for, you know, for putting whatever he did in. But
Yeah.
anyway, General Stubblebine, the head of the Intelligence and Security Command, had officers looking for PK and psychic events.
Yeah.
And one of them happened to be just stepped into the room. He said he just wanted to see 12 generals in a room at one time, and just out of curiosity. He saw it. He recognized what happened. And a little bit later, General Stubblebine came out to the field station to install a new commander there. And they called me into the office. And he got right up in my face and scowled. Did you kill my computers with your mind? And I heard one estimate that it was like $50 million worth of computers.
Wow.
And um, I don't know if it's that high. That seems high to me, but that's the estimate I heard. But I was going to lie about it. And I said, yes, sir, I did. If you've ever seen the movie The Men Who Stare at Goats, where General Hapgood asked Len Cassidy that question, and he says yes, the grin that comes across General Hapgood's face is exactly the grin that came across
Wow.
General Stubblebine's face. And he said, far effing out have I ever got a job for you. And he pulled me out of there, took me to DC. He wanted to start a unit that would destroy enemy computers mentally, um, with the end goal of learning how to control enemy computers,
Wow.
make their missiles either turn around and go back or drop into the sea or whatever, and destroy the data that was in enemy computers or scramble it up or whatever. And Congress got caught in the 60s doing mind control experiments on
Yeah.
U.S. citizens,
Yeah. MK Ultra,
and
right? Yeah.
they got burned badly for it. And so Congress said, no, that sounds like mind control. We won't fund it. So they took me out, General Stubblebine took me out to Fort Meade, where they had this unit in this ramshackled old rundown building. And he introduced me and said, I'm putting him here. And they read me on. And reading you on is where they hand you a sheet of paper that you read that tells what the unit really does, not what they tell the public they do.
Yeah.
And so I read that, signed it, you know, 10 years in jail, in prison, and whatever if you reveal what's on this page.
Wow.
And I thought, the military doesn't use psychics. That's crazy. I thought this was some kind of a trick or something. But over the next couple of weeks, I watched the guys working there, and they were doing it, and it was working. And so I thought, well, no wonder it's classified.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I said, hey, I'm for this. Teach me.
Amazing.
And
Yeah.
they did.
So just to summarize for the audience, you're working like a computer science sort of post. Was it in Germany?
It was in Germany. Yeah.
Yeah.
Augsburg, Germany. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have this professional rivalry with this other guy who has your job, who's also a programmer, and he sabotages you basically, and you know that he sabotaged you, which makes you livid. Starts
Mm,
off this PK event that takes down all these computers. Stubblebine, who's into all of this esoteric psychic stuff, hears about it, is like, I want to see if this guy's really psychic,
yeah.
recruits you, and boom, now suddenly you're at Fort Meade on this remote viewing team. Like
Yeah. He
Stubblebine's one of
sent
these
me
guys.
to
Oh,
the
sorry.
He sent me to the
Yeah.
Monroe Institute first. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about that too. I actually did a gateway retreat at the end of
Ah.
last year. So I
Hmm.
had a yeah, I won't get into my experience yet, but I wanted to ask about Stubblebine because I've read, I've read a couple books on this whole era. I've read Phenomena. I've read your book. But one of the things I'm foggy on is how did he become interested in like the esoteric and psi? Is that known?
I'm not really sure how he became interested in it. I know that he was a Scientologist,
Oh, was he? Okay,
previously a Scientologist, and so it may have come from that.
very
I
interesting.
know uh, most of the people forming the controlled remote viewing protocols and all that were all Scientologists. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
And then that eventually leads to this controversy where, we're getting into the lore a little bit now, but, like these early figures like Hal Puthoff, Russell Targ, Pat Price, there was this early involvement with Scientology.
Right.
And some
Hmm.
people believe that Pat Price, who's widely regarded as potentially like the greatest remote viewer or early remote viewer, it's like between him and Ingo Swann.
Yeah.
He
Well, he wasn't a
eventually,
remote
yeah,
viewer. He was a psychic. Yeah.
yeah.
A fantastic psychic. Yeah.
But he dies under mysterious circumstances, and everybody knows that it was kind of like, he was working directly for the CIA at this point. He was taken out of the Stargate project, so people don't know if it was the CIA, the Russians, the Scientologists. There's like this big interesting web of intrigue going on in the
Oh
early
yeah.
days.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you think
Yeah.
it was? I mean, this is speculation, obviously, or maybe I'm sure you know more than I do. But how do you think that those wires crossed, like early Scientology and all of this psi stuff?
I'm not sure because by the time the controlled remote viewing was going, all of them had left Scientology,
Right.
and they successfully left Scientology, which is hard to do.
Yeah. How do you
Uh,
think they were able to do that without too much trouble?
I think they had official enough titles and situations where they had the clout enough to say,
Yeah.
screw off, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Hal Puthoff probably had. He's probably got multiple ways to be like, "Hey, don't fuck with me." Okay. Like,
Oh, yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so here you are now, and I'm this is one of the things I'm always really intrigued by too, is this, I remember Paul Smith saying something like, he had been read on to top secret compartmentalized stuff before. Reading onto this program was like another level of insanely strict, insanely secret. Um, what were those early days for you like, and what is the orientation they put you through like?
Um, Angus One lost his contract with the government 2 days before I got there.
Yeah.
Story of my life. Yeah. And so he had trained uh, the, I think it was five other viewers who were there at the time. And so they said, well, we'll teach you. Well, come to find out later, Angus Swan had been changing the technology. He never got it fully developed. And so as he taught each student, they were getting a different method, a different version of the
Mhm.
methodology. And so there I was learning all the different versions of the methodology with teacher one day contradicting the other one the other day and all that. So I wound up uh, melding it all together and forming my own. And then later, I got to be good close friends with Ingo, and so got personal, non-official, but personal training and discussion and deeper understandings than uh, he gave to the military. Uh,
Hmm.
Ingo basically taught the military by rote memorization of a protocol. And we would get together and have coffee and do stuff and all that. And he would say, well, here's why that happened and here's how it happens and would go into the depth of it. And so I had already learned the protocol, and I got the reasons behind it and all that. And these days, that's what I teach. I teach for understanding rather than just teaching the protocol.
Hmm.
But um, the I don't know the first days of it. I know I didn't believe it. Okay,
Mhm.
and so I guess about on the third or fourth day, they said, "Okay, we're going to do what's called a beacon exercise. We're
Yeah.
going to send two of the viewers out to some place that we don't know where they are, and you can't bleed us for information at all." And so they randomly picked a sealed envelope out of a bunch of envelopes, drove away, and after they got totally away from the unit, they opened the envelope to see where to go. And it wound up being a playground park somewhere in the area there. And so they said, okay, 15 minutes later, they said, okay, they are at the site by now. We want you to describe the site where they are. And I said, well, how do I do that? And they said, well, just write whatever comes to mind. And what came to mind over the next 20 minutes was two people just driving around looking out windows, not knowing where they are, and they were confused. And that's all I got. I was expecting a site. They were expecting me to get a site and all that. And so anyway, the monitor said, "Okay, well you didn't do it, and don't worry, it's your first time. Don't worry about it and all that.
Mhm.
And we'll find out where they went when they come back." Well, they came back later, and they said, "We never could find the place. We just drove and drove and drove." And all
That's
of a
awesome.
sudden, I realized, hey, maybe I can do this too. you know,
It's funny how Paul has a similar story about the donut shop, which I'm sure you've heard,
oh
where
yeah, yeah, the
his
donut
target was
shop.
the
Yeah,
water tower, and he saw the donut shop that they stopped
yeah.
by instead. Yeah, it's
That's
it's an
happened.
it's
That's happened to
amazing.
me several times too. When they said, "Okay, well, you got the target. Let's stop by this other," and that stopping by the other place
Yeah.
influenced the session you've already done. Yeah,
And in some ways, this really underscores some of the difficulties. If people have already accepted in their mind, okay, remote viewing seems to be real. I've heard enough stories. I've seen enough,
yeah,
data. Maybe I've experienced similar things myself. It really underscores the intricacies of remote viewing and how difficult it can be to get to the desired target instead of
oh
all
yeah,
of the other noise and things that happen around the target, prior to the target,
yeah.
adjacent to the target. So yeah, that's really fascinating stuff. So, was there anything else in the sort of like initiation period? Is there like material they make you review, books they make you read, stuff like that?
Not books. There's a thing called an ideogram.
Yeah.
The subconscious mind doesn't speak to the conscious mind, but it speaks to the body. And so, just like in martial arts, wax on, wipe off, and all that. And so they will sit there, and at the time, we didn't have computers there. Okay. So one of them would sit there and say, water. And I would draw a wavy line. And they would say, man made. And I would draw something with an angle. And well, they would say structure. And I would draw a circle for space and things like that. And would sit there for what seemed like hours just doing that. And the wax on, wipe off, just like in the martial arts. You get so bored that your conscious mind just starts thinking about something else. Pretty soon, your subconscious mind is doing the work.
Mhm, mhm.
And at some point along the way, it will do the ideogram before the guy calls the word. And so we did that for just excruciating amounts of time. And that's your first initiation to get your body trained to tell you what the subconscious knows.
Yeah.
And then one day they say, okay, we have a picture in an envelope. Um, what's in it? Well, I don't know. Okay, well, this is envelope number 25. And your hand goes like this, and you say, I don't know what's in it, but there's water and some kind of a structure. And they open the envelope, and there's a boat sitting on the ocean.
Yeah.
And your subconscious has told you through your body what the target is. And then after you get good at that, which takes practice, 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 um, then they will say, okay, like in that case there, they will say, okay, describe the water. Well, it's water. No, don't use nouns. Describe it. Taste it. Oh, tastes salty. Still haven't looked at the feedback. Um, Tastes salty. And what temperature is it? It's cold. Um, um, Stick your hand into it. Oh, it's wet. Uh, Look at it. Oh, it's wavy. It's not smooth, and all this, and it's big. And you start describing and describing. Okay, now that you've done that, let's describe the structure that you saw. Well, it's sticking up out of the water. It's pointed on one end. It's tall. And you start describing. And this is stage two, where you take the information you got from stage one and start describing it in an organized manner.
Hmm.
Then you go into stage three after you've learned to do that well. You go into stage three where you say, "Oh, it's pointed on one end and big. Well, can you sketch that?" And you start sketching it. And then you go into stage four, five, six, seven, and all that as you train. And in the end, uh, they tell me what's in the document that's locked in the safe in the Kremlin. You know,
Yeah.
um, okay. Um, there's a house. I'm not going to tell you where. Draw the floor plans. Oh, okay. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah.
So when then do they just kind of surprise you one day when they start to actually task you, or do you know ahead of time? Okay, I'm going to get my first real tasking today, or how does that go?
The big surprise was Ingo always gave in session feedback. So if you did something right, he'd say correct. Okay. And if you did something wrong, he wouldn't say anything. No
Hmm.
reward, no negative rewards. The silence was a negative reward when he didn't say anything. And so at some point, they say, okay, you've got the method, you've got the protocols down, you've got the training, you've got all that. So let's do another target. And I'm not giving you any in session feedback. And so you do something, and the monitor sits there and stares. Oh, what have I done wrong? You know? And so they say, go ahead and you do your session. They don't say anything. What have I done wrong? Oh, I've messed up. They take the picture out of the envelope, and you see that you did it right without the feedback coming in, all that. You don't depend on your monitor. And then you go through that process of learning how to view the target in spite of not having any help.
Yeah.
And then along the way, you learn to, um, up to this point, you've been viewing your feedback. Okay. You've been viewing what you're going to see a few minutes later. So you've been viewing through time, actually. You've been viewing forward into the immediate future.
Hmm.
And so at some point, they will give you a target uh, without feedback. And they will give you the score of how you did, but you don't get any feedback
Hmm.
ever. And this is a lot of this is in training for the fact that since most people view their feedback while they're learning,
Yeah.
if you work for one of the three-letter agencies, and this happened several times, and you want your feedback, they'll come back and say, "Sorry, you're not cleared for the information you gave us."
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
You
Yeah.
know, or they will just come back and lie to you. So if you can only view your feedback and their feedback is a lie, your session is going to be bad.
Hmm.
So they teach you to view the target no matter what the feedback.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for people that don't know, this is a really important point because there are
Yeah.
people out there who philosophize about how this is possible. Like there's a are you familiar with Eric Wargo? He wrote this book Time Loops. Um
I've heard of the book. I haven't read it. Yeah.
so his he believes in psi, he believes in remote viewing, but his
Yeah.
interpretation is that it's actually the viewer somehow viewing their future self, like future knowledge that their future self has through getting the feedback. And he really sticks to this idea that in every documented case that's known, people always get the feedback, and that's actually what they're remote viewing. And
Yeah.
he's got this like what sounds like a logically solid
Mhm.
tautology laid out there, right? Like, okay, it makes sense that if you're going to
Yeah.
know that you were correct, you're going to have to have gotten the feedback to know you were correct. But hearing what you just said, I feel like that kind of pokes a hole in that argument because clearly you must actually have some kind of um
It
yeah, go
doesn't
ahead.
poke a hole in it
Okay.
because in 99% of the people doing remote viewing, that's exactly what they do. They view the
Hmm,
feedback. They
interesting.
never get to that training, which is some hard training, by the way, uh, that we got to where you view the target in spite of getting right feedback, wrong feedback, no feedback.
Hmm,
Um, um, one of the things they will say is, I know one target we had to introduce this. Uh, they had a picture of a lake that was there on Fort Meade during the winter, frozen over. And so they said, okay, view this target. Well, I got a lake and all that. And, and I got a lake with ducks floating around on it and all that. And the time I did the session was in the middle of the summer. And I got the lake in the middle of the summer. And then they showed me the feedback that said, you know, this is frozen, but you got the lake in spite of the feedback.
hmm,
You described the lake as it is.
hmm,
And so then they will start doing things like that. They'll give you a coordinate and and say, okay, move to the targeted date, and the targeted date may be 50 years ago.
right.
Okay, they don't tell you what the targeted date is, and you describe it, and then they show you the feedback of that specific spot at the present time, which now has a huge building on it, and you've just described an empty field.
Hmm.
And yes, you did it right.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's take a sidebar here into something a bit more philosophical, which is,
Mhm.
the theory on how this works, because that's a whole separate question. Like you prove to yourself you can do it, but clearly you're not using, any known you're it's not like maybe it's like throwing a football or a martial art in that you're doing a skill that you must learn, but it's not a
Yeah.
physiological skill, right? It's something that's happening within the realm of the mental. And you like to use the phrase subconscious. Um,
Mhm.
but I'm curious, when you say subconscious, do you mean something similar to like what Carl Jung would have meant when he says subconscious, or do
When he
you
said
mean
unconscious, he said unconscious, yeah.
oh,
Mhm.
right? But yeah, so there's like the unconscious, the collective, and then there's like the
Mhm.
personal unconscious or subconscious. But this is
Yeah.
like,
Almost everybody has a theory of how it works and where it comes from,
yeah,
and, they hang on to that theory like they're lost at sea and it's the only thing that floats, and they will never let go of it, and even if you rescue them from it, they you get them up into the boat, they still cling on to that theory, they're not gonna let go of it and all that,
yeah,
and, the theory that I have developed over all these years is I don't know the answer. And so that's the sum of my theory. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know how it works. Uh, all I know is that we can bring home missing soldiers. We can help bring home missing kids. And all I know is it works. So I sit down and do it, and I never worry about how it works. And,
Hmm,
you know, uh, I have a theory, of course, that your subconscious mind has access to universal information. I can't even define what universal information means, so it's just a way to have a little pet theory of my own. But the subconscious mind, um, okay, many of the psychiatrists and psychologists I have as students just rail over the fact that I use subconscious instead of Jung and Freud's uh, unconscious.
sure,
And I say, the unconscious, that's a noun. You're talking about a thing, the unconscious. Um, as an adjective, it is not unconscious. It's very conscious. And they agree with that. And I say both Jung and Freud had micro personalities within the unconscious. They
yeah,
agree with that. And I say each one of those is conscious. So I call it the subconsciouses, subconscious.
hmm,
And they still rail against my use of the word subconscious because Jung and Freud never said it. But uh, that's why I call it the sub consciousness. It's below the lemon.
hmm.
Um, uh, do you know what the sub? Do you know what the lemon is?
Well, I imagine that it means something like the sort of threshold of what the conscious mind can recognize, and there's somehow that
Yeah,
threshold is transcended by this
yeah,
information, and you learn to.
but it's not. It's not the barrier between the subconscious and the conscious mind. It's the barrier between your awareness.
Hmm,
Many
yeah,
times you can be consciously aware of what's subconscious. Many times there can be something going around you and you're not aware of it.
yes,
And so the lemon is the barrier between what you're aware of and what you're not aware of. That's
got
why
it.
they can put uh, product placement in in sitcoms and all this, and you know their product goes across the screen right at the funniest time. And if you
Yeah,
want an example of that, um, Top Flight, the movie, uh, the two guys, the two pilots are in there getting chewed out by the commander in the military office. Okay. They walk out of the office, and as they do, a waiter comes by in a military office. A waiter comes by carrying a tray full of drinks, and they hit him with the door, and the drinks spill. And if you go frame by frame by frame, okay, this tray of drinks comes down across the screen as a blur, a moving blur, and one frame of that has a very clear sign saying drink Pepsi. And then
hmm,
it blurs back out and goes back out. You never see it.
Yeah, the subliminal.
You're never
Yeah.
aware of it, and yet you saw it with your eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, fascinating. You know what this reminds me of, and I can't believe I forgot to go back to Monroe Institute with you.
Oh, yeah.
This reminds me of when I was doing the meditations at Monroe Institute. You know, did they use the phrasing "click out" back then with you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you know, you'd be meditating, you would click out, right? So at
Yeah.
first you're like, "What do you mean I'm falling asleep?" It's the same thing. But the
Yeah.
more you do it, I really did start to get a sense that I was kind of aware in a different way when I was in
Yeah.
the quote unquote clicked out state. And what really tipped me off to it is sometimes I would feel like I was becoming aware again in the middle
Mhm.
of something I was doing somewhere else or some consciousness else, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that that is, and that's very similar to like what Jung, for instance, would encourage with sort of developing a relationship with the unconscious through dream work, through active imagination. It's like
Yeah.
you've got to find a way to connect these two things because, like you're saying, they don't speak through language; they speak through symbols. They speak through
That's right. Yeah.
uh, other kinds of more sort of nebulous, uh, hard to determine ways. So it's almost like you've got to build a language between these two regions of
Yeah.
mind. And it seems like in a lot of ways, that's what remote viewing kind of is.
It as to a very strict degree. Your subconscious um, talks in pictures and similes, in um, illustrations and pictures and all this. Your conscious mind thinks in nouns. We've been trained.
Yeah.
We're English speakers. Our sentences are built around the nouns, the subject. And so in the remote viewing training that we give, we say no nouns. And so you have something. Here's one of my favorites. Um, you get that the target is red, it's round, it's rubbery. Oh, it's a ball. It's not a ball. It's a place that has a red flower sitting in the kitchen. There's a rubber mat, and
Mm,
in there there's something. The rubber mat is round, okay, and yet you try to seize that noun. And so we make everybody take every noun and set it over to the side and say, maybe it's like that, but come back and describe it, describe
yeah.
it, describe it. And people still form pictures in their head and they'll describe a target completely, 100% accurately. And they'll look at the feedback and they'll say, oh, I missed it. That's not what I thought it was.
Yeah.
We say, you're right. It's not what you thought it was, but you described it, you know?
Yeah, that's very fascinating. So you did have a pretty impactful experience at Monroe Institute, right? Do you want to share that story?
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't believe in out of body experiences. Okay. And I thought, you know, I'd heard people say, well, I can see their aura. And, I thought, oh, that's just after image. You stared too long at something. And, and so General Stubblebine had put me there through the Monroe course, and I was going through it and thinking, I'm here with all these frou-frou people doing frou-frou things. And one day I was in the check unit, the
Hmm.
unit where you lie down and you listen to the tones.
Yep.
And I was trying to just nod off, click out, and
Yeah.
wasn't having any success. And so my nose started itching. And I thought, no, I'm going to click out. I'm not going to let and the nose itched. And so I finally raised up and scratched my nose, and it felt like I had gloves on.
Mm.
And I opened my eyes, and this glowing hand slightly glowing hand was scratching my nose, and I looked down, and my real hand, physical hand, was still down across my stomach, you know.
Wow.
And when that happened, I thought, that's neat. It actually works.
Yeah.
And so I'd heard that, the spirit hand can go through walls and all that. And so I started putting my hand through the wall and through the bed and everything else. And, and, you know, pointing to my other hand and just trying all these experiments with it. And
Yeah.
then I thought, okay, I'm going to put this hand back into my physical hand, pull it out again, and do that several times so I can practice how to do it. I put it in, and that's the last out of body experience I've ever
Yeah.
had.
So
I had
I
an
have
out of arm
you're
experience.
right. Yeah. But that is impactful. And when it happens, it's enough to show you unequivocally that okay, that's real. And this is similar to what happened to me, Lynn, because I'm not a skeptic. I wouldn't consider myself a skeptic. Like, I mean, I
Yeah,
talk about this stuff. I'm interested in this stuff, but I'm also very aware that there's a difference between having an intellectual interest in something and really experiencing it, not
that's
bullshitting
right.
yourself, knowing that
Yeah,
like this is really real and I didn't just imagine it. And as you said, you go to Monroe Institute, they're encouraging, use your imagination, do all these things, and I think
yeah,
that's great in some ways, but I also wanted to have a real experience when I was there. Um and to my great shock, on the very last day of the retreat, I clicked out. I had this weird, like, lucid dream experience that was unlike
hmm,
anything I experienced at any other time in the retreat, where it felt completely normal, like I was just
yeah,
standing in a different room. And I slowly was retracing my steps and being like, how the hell did I get in this room? Like, I don't remember walking here. I don't remember. And then as soon as I realized I did not walk to this room, I'm in the check unit meditating. I
yeah,
came back. I was in the check unit, and the vibrations and energy and all of that stuff that they
hmm,
teach
yeah,
you to evoke was going crazy, like really
yeah.
really strong. And then I tried to move, and I peeled out, and I just like this vibrating, energetic kind of body shape just started going
Yeah.
like kind of
Oh, really?
vibrating, yeah, like coming out. And it was
Mhm.
terrifying. It's exactly like how Bob described it in Journeys Out of the Body. You're just terrified. You
Mhm.
can't intellectualize it and reason with yourself. Like, it's just everything in you is terrified. And so I was,
I wasn't. My
okay.
reaction to things like that is, "Man, that's neat." And, uh, my hand was up here doing things,
Hmm.
and I lifted my head up, and I made sure that I was awake.
Yeah.
I was wide awake.
Yeah.
So but, yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead. You
No,
were
so
terrified. Yeah.
yeah, I was terrified. I got back in my body, and I had that very much sort of like adrenaline dump feeling, like almost like you were just in a car accident or something like
Yeah.
that. And coming out of that experience, all I can say is that's a real thing. Like, I know that I
Yeah.
experienced that.
Yeah.
Just like I know I'm sitting in this room right now, but beyond that, I don't know shit. I don't know anything else beyond that.
Yeah.
I didn't get to turn around and see myself fully. I didn't get to like go out of the check unit. I just felt the extremely, strong, undeniable
Yeah.
sensation of that separation, and whatever that energy is
Yeah.
floating upward. And that was enough to just be like, okay, if I can't say that that was real, I can't really say that sitting in this room right now is real. It
Oh,
felt
right. Yeah.
that
Mhm.
visceral and that
Yeah.
convincing. Yeah.
Yeah, there's an old saying that, once you see a white crow, you can no longer say that crows can't be anything but black,
Right.
you know. Greg Seward was looking for a logo and all that, and I told him that, and he adopted the white crow as his company name and all
That's
that.
cool.
And
That's cool.
there are such things as white crows. They're rare, but there are such things.
Do you think that that experience like a lot of people listening may not be aware, and but I know you're very aware, and anybody who's like really dived into remote viewing is aware that these are very distinct things in some ways. Like you don't need to
Yeah,
go to Monroe Institute and have an out of body to remote view,
right.
and vice versa. But do you think that experiences like that do help kind of wake something up within you, or do you think
Oh,
it's totally
absolutely. Absolutely, yes, they did for me anyway, yeah. Um, yeah, m going to the unit, going to Monroe and all that, there were many things that my Baptist upbringing didn't prepare me for. That, that I had to finally say, "Hey, this is real. I'm not going to hell for it." It's,
yeah.
and,
Yeah. So one of the things you said in the book that I found really interesting, like to be a really interesting piece of nuance, is the differences in the skills of the remote viewers and how they find themselves accessing information, and that you were
yeah,
particularly good at getting into people's minds and seeing
yeah.
what people's minds were doing. Um, how did you realize that, and what are some sort of notable targets that you can share?
Uh, I realized it because I was keeping the data for the unit. I became the database manager, and I realized it because every time I got one of those, my accuracy went sky high.
Hmm.
And, um,
So
I was
sorry
just,
to interrupt, but that would be a tasking like essentially asking you to like what is this person thinking or something, right?
what is this person thinking? What is this person doing? What are their plans and intentions?
Yeah.
Um, uh, two of the uh, really deep things where you do that is plans and intentions, and the other one is personality profile. Plans and intentions is much deeper and harder than personality profile because personality profile, you just access a person, describe what they do, how they act, and all this other stuff. Uh, but you get into their mind for their plans and intentions. But, we would get targets like that, and I wouldn't know what the target was. I mean, I just a number, and they would lead me to a person and describe the person. And and doing the database later, after we got the feedback, uh, I realized, hey, this is a strong point for me. I don't understand why, but it is.
So fascinating. And we didn't specifically say this, but when you are tasked, you're literally receiving like a string of numbers.
Oh
there's
yeah,
basically no loaded information. We didn't say that specific. There's obviously
yeah.
different ways you can task in remote viewing, but in
Oh
CRV,
yeah,
like you were
different
doing
ways.
at Fort Meade, they would just give you this random string of numbers, and that's all you had to go on, right?
Yeah, and you know, you can you can say to a trained remote viewer, you can say, "This is project number 970404.
Yeah.
Question three. What's the answer?"
Wow.
Now, there's also front loading where you may have a very complex target. Okay. Let's say it's a hotel, and um, outside the hotel, there's a bay, and there's boats on the bay, paddle boats, and all this. There's a bar out in the water where people sit and drink, and people all over the beach, parking lot, and everything else. And what they will say is, here's a target. Describe the targeted activity
Hmm.
because that's what we're interested in. Okay. There are dozens and dozens of activities going on there,
Right.
but they don't want you spending 5 hours describing a hotel building, you know, if if what the customer wants is a description of some meeting that's going on in a conference room. And so they may give you neutral front loading, but they would never say, there's a meeting going on in a conference room. Tell me what they're discussing. That's pollution.
Hmm.
But they can say, you know, here's a complex target. Just describe the activity part of it.
Hmm.
Things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that also brings to mind, like, obviously this is Cold War era when you were active. So there would be something like, there's the famous case of uh the giant building where Joe McMoneagle remote viewed
Yeah.
the submarine. And then there's a story you tell in your book where there's this strange technology that they wanted you to like literally get inside of and try to like
Yeah.
become part of this like beam. Would
It was a
yeah,
death ray.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Huh?
would you share that story?
Yeah. They had this particle beam weapon over in Russia, and they wanted to know what was going on inside the beam. An analysis of the beam itself, not the equipment or anything like that. And of course, a particle beam like that, you can't stick an instrument in there because it's immediately just vaporized. And so somebody had the brilliant idea of let's stick a remote viewer in there and see if that works.
Yeah.
And I go at life with curiosity. And so they offered it, and I said, "Oh, that's neat. I'll try it." You know, and stepped into the beam, and it was the experience was indescribably beautiful.
Hmm.
I've never been able to adequately describe it, but also at the same time, I realized that time inside that beam is totally messed up,
Hmm.
and the beam, what I saw, that what the customer wanted was the beam was circling counterclockwise as it comes out, and the equipment doesn't do that. The beam itself starts circling counterclockwise, and so that was what they wanted. But the experience of that, of the colors, the feelings, the experience of standing still and being totally timeless, but looking one way and seeing my past and looking another way and seeing my future. And if I moved in the beam, it would, you know, it was it was indescribable,
Hmm.
really. The experience of it, I've never been able to adequately tell anybody what it was like. It was
Yeah,
just the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. Yeah.
that's really fascinating. I almost like just my mind conjures like something psychedelic looking or something, just some kind of
Oh, totally.
almost like
Absolutely.
kaleidoscopic, beautiful geometric
Yeah.
patterns or something like that.
Mega psychedelic. Yeah.
Very interesting, very interesting. So did we do we know exactly what that thing was, like what the technology they were using was?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They knew what it was. They knew where it was. Knew, uh, I think, how it worked, everything else. What they seemed to be interested in was what's happening inside the beam itself.
Hmm.
And so that seemed to be what they were tasking me with. Yeah.
Hmm. Interesting. Interesting. Was it more just to see like what would happen if you did it, or was there actually like some piece of like
No,
intelligence they were after?
as I got it later, for feedback, they were interested in what goes on inside the beam. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Weird. Weird. Um what other targets stick out to you as just really important moments for yourself or that maybe taught you something about
Mhm.
reality or anything that Paul Smith has that crazy story about remote viewing the incident on the USS Stark, and like
Oh yeah.
like
Mhm.
the next day or a couple days after, the exact thing that he remote viewed was in the
There
headlines.
have
Yeah.
been many of those uh, um, with each of the remote viewers. One of mine on that was Chernobyl.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I saw and described the event, what actually 2 days before it happened, but it didn't come out in the news until about 5 days later, uh, when Iceland reported this cloud of radioactive coming across Iceland. But yeah, that happened. I know um, Paul talks about the start, but every one of the remote viewers in the unit has an experience like that they can talk about, and not just one, but many.
Yeah.
Um, but as far as a personal thing, um, the one target that has always stood out to me is personal. Uh, I was good at accessing people. And so they had given me Saddam Hussein over and over and over. The man was flipping out crazy, evil, mean, and and I got tired of it. And I went into the director and I said, "Look, give me Bozo the Clown, give me Mother Teresa, give me a break." And he said, "You're a soldier. Shut up and do your damn job. Do what you're asked. Do what you're told." Yeah. And so I went back, and some maybe a week later, um, there was seemingly nothing going on in the world, and so I was to do a personality profile, and um, so the envelope was sealed, and I started my session, and I thought, wait a minute, this isn't Saddam Hussein, and I started on and on, and I said, "You got the wrong guy. This is a good person." And I think my monitor was Bill Ray at the time,
Hmm.
and he said, "Just go on with it." And so I did. And at the end of the session, I felt like I was just glowing. I'd had this PSI experience, a little bit beyond bilocation, and uh, my summary was, whatever you think this guy did, he didn't do it. And so we ended the session. The monitor opened the envelope, and the director had handwritten across a page, Jesus.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say I met Jesus in person, okay? But mentally, I actually met Jesus in person. And what he explained to me changed my life.
Wow.
It really did.
Wow. Yeah, I remember that story from the book, and I feel like that's one of those stories that, well, first of all, thanks for bringing that up, because this is also a really good pivot point into some of the more anomalous, exotic targets that are,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
dangerous to navigate, but we have to, right? But yeah, I mean, that kind of an experience, and then, I mean, what was the feeling that came over you after you saw that that was the target? Was there a part of you that was already suspecting that, or was it like the hairs stood up on your? What was that like?
I didn't suspect it in session. In session, I had the PSI experience, which is a little bit beyond bilocation. Bilocation, you know you're at the target, but you're also at the table writing things down, and that's okay. Uh, the beyond that, it gets to where you can't tell you're not at the target, and just like you found yourself in another room
Yeah.
at
Okay.
Monroe,
Wow.
and I found myself standing in front of this short little Jewish-looking guy in a modern suit,
Oh, interesting.
modern dress, and all that, and and I've you know, I had done the personality assessment and I felt dirty being around this guy.
Hmm.
And I thought, how could I ever be like this guy? I wish I could. I can't. And so what he let me know is whatever you've done bad, I've seen worse. Whatever you've done good, I've seen better. I love you anyway.
Wow.
And that's when I came out of that, came back to it, and that changed
Yeah.
my life. All
Wow.
this, you know, growing up, you dance with that girl or you look at her that way, you're going to hell, and all
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
All of a sudden, that I saw it for what it really was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so simple, but it's so profound, and that's just like
Oh yeah. Yeah.
that's beautiful. Um, so on the subject of more anomalous targets, this is
Hmm.
such a difficult one to navigate because everyone wants to hear about it, but all of the responsible remote viewers want to be really careful with this because this is an arena where you probably can't get feedback, right? You can't if I ask you to like remote view alien intelligence or
Yeah.
any kind of paranormal thing, how can you ever get the feedback to prove that this happened? So it's a playground for like self deception.
Yeah.
But eventually, so you don't use his name in the book, but his name has since come out all over the place. So eventually, Ed Dames is working at Fort Meade, and he is not in charge. Skip Atwater is in charge at this time, I believe.
Yeah. Hmm.
And but Ed Dames would still task you guys at times, and he developed this tape.
With ETs. Yeah.
Yeah,
He
and he
was
did
told
like
not
yeah,
to, and he did anyway. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So it seems universally to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the viewers did not really like this and they complained about it.
No. Actually, what we didn't like, okay, was not the getting of ET targets. What we didn't like was we would view along and you talk out loud as you write things down. And we would write down, you know, something that we saw. And Ed, as the monitor, is there to keep you in structure only. And Ed would say, you would say, I see something red. And Ed would say, don't you mean green?
Yeah.
You know, and, uh, and, he would tell you what you found in spite of what you found. And so it finally got to where we would go over and we would just humor Ed. We'd say something, he'd say what he thought it was, and we'd just write it down and get the session over with and leave. And and we knew it was all garbage anyway. But what Ed would do was he would view a target, usually an ET target. He would get his results, and then as you worked through your session, he would guide you to get his results too.
Mm,
And that's what we didn't like.
yeah. Major pollution, right? Like you can't
Oh
even
yeah.
and it seems like it would break you out of your flow too. Like you're to have
Oh yeah, we
somebody
just quit
insert.
remote viewing. Yeah,
Yeah.
we just started, okay, whatever it tells me, I'll write it down.
So with that said, there are these anomalous targets that are pretty well known that the people involved in
Mhm.
the viewing of them seem to have pretty high conviction that they're probably real. Like Project 8200 might be one of the best known ones. And for
Yeah.
people that don't know this story, this was after your time with the unit, I believe, right?
But I no, this was actually before my time in the
Oh,
unit.
okay.
However, I hadn't heard about it until they had me do those sessions.
Oh, so I
And
didn't know you
so,
were in those sessions.
oh yeah, uh, there were 4 AT bases.
Yeah.
I was tasked to do 3 of them. I never did the one in the Pyrenees.
Okay.
up in the Pyrenees Mountains in Spain. I did the other three and did work on them that matched extremely closely to Pat Price's descriptions, which I had never seen. I didn't even know. I had never heard of those targets before.
Yeah.
I got numbers, you know,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I had done those. I don't know if they're in the book 8200. Is that
That yeah, that's why I thought you weren't, because I think I it's been a while since I've looked
yeah.
at it, but I thought I remembered your name not being in there. So I assumed that you weren't,
Yeah,
but
I'm not surprised at that. Yeah. Um,
interesting. Well, just to take a
I
step back
I
for
have never I have never minded not being that way. I know at the conference in California that we had for the IRVA conference,
yeah.
IRVA, International Remote Viewers Association, Paul gave a list of everybody who had ever been in the unit. My name wasn't on that list.
Well, what the hell? Why?
Yeah,
Why?
I don't know. I don't know.
Man, that's weird.
Uh,
Um,
but yeah, um,
well,
you
can I
know,
take it?
I spent my whole career not existing, and so I don't mind. I don't mind that at all.
Well,
Yeah.
I mind on your behalf. I mind on your behalf.
Mm.
To take a step back, just to review this Project 8200 sequence of events. So this is something that harkens back to the early days of Project Stargate, when this pre Fort Meade. So this is during
Yeah.
the SRI days. There's this, this rock star remote viewer, Pat Price. He
Yeah.
remote views what he says essentially are four UFO bases. He gives this
Hmm.
information to
Yeah.
um, Hal Puthoff. Years go by. Hal Puthoff apparently gives the information to Skip Atwater in
Yeah.
your era, and then he just kind of says, "You might think this is interesting. Maybe you want to task your guys with it." So then he does. He tasks you. He tasks McMonigal with all of them, I believe,
Yeah.
and then a number of the other viewers get like one site or whatever. But so what was your experience like with this? What did you see at these targets?
The one I saw at Mount Hayes up in Alaska was that the place had was still there, but it had virtually closed down to just a skeleton crew of aliens, and was not being used all that much at the time. I found that this goes along with what Joe and some of the others found as they worked the process through time. Um, the one in Zimbabwe, I found to be a repair place,
Hmm.
a UFO repair place, and sunken into the ground. And the one in Mount Zeal in northern Australia, uh, that's the one that really got me the most. Um, I had described it as sort of an airport, an incoming uh, where UFOs from wherever sort of report there before they go out across the world,
Hmm.
and got sort of a terminal and all that. Now, I found out later that Pat Price, when he had done that one, had been spoken to by the ETs.
Really?
And when I got to that one, this voice came to me, sort of like over a speaker or something, said, "We know you're here and it's okay. Look
Wow.
around."
Wow.
And so I looked around. Hey, I'm invited in. That's good. I looked around and I started describing things. And the things I described basically exactly matched what Pat Price has found, uh, even down to the dimensions of the ship and the
Wow.
shape of the ship and all that. And so I spent a lot of time in there doing a lot of descriptions of it. I don't know whatever happened to that uh,
Wow.
to that transcript,
That's
but
wild.
it was a very thorough transcript.
How could they not include that, man? That's a travesty. I wish I had access to that. That's amazing.
I don't know.
Um, when you hear this, so first I want to ask too, what did you get a sense? What kind of sense did you get with these beings? You said that you said that openly that they're aliens, but did they look alien? Did they look human? Did they look like one of these common races you hear spoken about?
Some of them did. Some of them looked like little grays. There were others that I would swear were human, not look like human, but were humans
Hmm.
working there. Uh, and at this one point, I saw a female gray and a child gray,
Hmm.
which I've never heard of anybody else saying before.
Yeah.
But it was, you know, but basically, I just looked around. There were two levels, uh, airport, you know, level where you wait for planes out and planes coming in and all that, and then sort of a repair and utility place floor underneath. And so I just went around describing things. That's all.
Wow.
Um, I didn't have any really reaction to it because I was just describing a target. That's all I
Right.
was doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would imagine you just kind of train yourself to be that way because
Yeah.
emotion's only going to get in the way of doing good work,
That's
right?
right.
Like,
They do. Yeah. Mhm.
so I got to ask this: since your strongest sort of talent seemed to be accessing minds, did you access the mind of any of these beings?
Not there. Not
Okay,
those. No.
but it's when you say not those, it sounds like maybe on some other occasion you did.
There were other targets that we had where it did. Yeah.
Please share if you can.
There was one where the feedback I got was it was on Titan, and I was to describe a site, and this wasn't front loaded as personality profile or anything like that. Just describe a site, and I found this very cold, dark place, and it was just rocks, barren, and mountains, and things like that. And I heard some noise, and so I went to this place, and it was sort of a cavern in a mountainside or something like that. And there were these two beings, and they're they were talking to each other, but their speech was totally unintelligible. And so I thought, well, I'll get into the mind, seeing what they're saying. And when I did, I have never seen anything so totally alien, so totally non-human. I mean, we've had to do animals before and things
Hmm.
like that. And no, this was so totally alien that there was no way to humanly understand any part of it. And so after trying that for a while, I backed out um, and described the surrounding territory and ended the session.
Hmm.
And that was evidently the target was the surface of Titan.
Wow. And in what context was this target given in? Was this part of
Training,
Okay, okay. Wow.
practice. Yeah,
Did
there's
did you get the
I
sense
distinguish between training and practice, but
got it. Did you get the sense that whoever tasked this already kind of knew that there was something intelligent on Titan, or was it a completely random?
I think it was just a completely random thing. Yeah,
Wow.
but
Wow.
now there are other um, things that have done practice sessions during the military, um, work after the military, working for space organizations and all that. where we've encountered other things, and I have done accessing mentally and
Mm.
all that. Um, mainly after the service. Anything that Ed gave us, I just blew it off,
Wow.
you know. But after service, we've done work on the moon, on Mars, on other star systems and planets and things like that, where we found intelligent life. And uh, this one customer, I can talk about this in generalities.
Yeah.
It's a non-disclosure agreements, but um, task a star system and wanted to know whether there'd be any intelligent life. And so I did the session, and in fact, a couple of us on the team did the session, and we found that there were 5 planets going around the star. Come to find out later, once they learned how to tell there were planets going around the star by the star wobbling and all that
Hmm.
from gravitational pull, there were 5 planets going around it. And on one planet, we found a race of beings that wound up physically describing them physically, wound up looking sort of like Sasquatch,
Oh,
uh,
wow. Okay.
hairy, and um, intelligent, but with an IQ on our standard of maybe 90. Their highest intelligence would be maybe 90 on our scale.
Hmm. Hmm.
They weren't smart, um, but they were being cultivated by another group of aliens who would come in to their planet, give them training, give them supplies, and all that. And those would go out and dig up minerals to deliver to the incoming people who were bringing them food and all that. And so they were being treated, like workers on that planet to get minerals and provide it to the aliens who came into that
Mm.
planet. And
So they were interacting with something more advanced.
yes, absolutely, yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
And the thing is that this group saw me there and interacted with me, which is extremely strange because using the CRV protocol of Ingos, you can't get noticed. And
Yeah.
but they noticed me and all that. Now the incoming beings, they were never able to even notice that I was there.
Wow.
So
I got to ask you, what the hell's going on with the moon? What do you think is going on with the moon? Because there's it's been it is objectively so strange, right down to its geometry, down to there's been countless videos and essays and books written about how the moon just almost shouldn't exist. It's just so perfect. It's
yeah.
from its size compared to
Hmm.
the Earth, its distance, its mass, the fact that it seems to be hollow or partially hollow, based on the fact that they crashed this lunar lander into it and it rung like a bell. Of course, there's so
Oh
much
yeah.
lore about um, there being secret bases on the moon, there being hidden beings on the back side of the moon, the dark side of the moon, even
Mhm.
though it's not really dark. There's a Paul and Ingo have the story about remote viewing something intelligent on the moon. What is
Oh
your
yeah, I
sense?
have too.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
what
have too.
yeah, please share.
And I've done some accessing there too, mentally. But yeah, one time, one of the space agencies came and they said, "We want to build a facility on the moon. The problem is, how do we house the people who are going up to build that facility since there's no facility there to house them?" And so um, my team and I, um, we sort of cheated on this one. Everybody was coming up with these logical ideas. I said, "No, we're supposed to remote view this," and they said, "Oh, but here's how to do it. I know how to do it, and all that." So finally, I said, "Okay, here's your task. Move mentally to this spot." I gave them the coordinates, geographic coordinates on the moon. I said, "Move to this spot. Now, mentally move forward in time to where
Mm,
there is a targeted facility there and describe it." And they did. And so instead of giving the information we were tasked to give, we moved and described the successful end result, brought it back. I gave that to the uh, agency that was planning to build it on the moon. And um, they were ecstatic. They said we hadn't thought of that before. And so I guess about 5 years later, this is a good 25 years ago, um, I was out at a place located there in California. And the guy said, "Well, here's a recent flyby of the moon." And so he showed me the flyby and he said, "I want you to watch this on the screen." And it was just a picture of the moon, you know, as they flew over and all that. And all of a sudden, here was this crater that went by with a plastic bubble over it.
really?
And I said,
Wow.
"Wait a minute, stop the movie, stop, stop the film." And he said, "Yeah, I thought you'd notice that." And he cut it off, and I got no more information. But
Wow.
what we had found was that if you take a small crater, put a plastic bubble over it, just
Like a
around the
dome.
rim,
Yeah.
seal it, and it has to be a special plastic that would keep out radiation and all that. And what the viewers found was that very complex plastic and buildings inside, and they found patches on it. And so I said, "Describe the patches." And they said, "It's like duct tape." And if a small meteorite, hits that thing and punches a hole, you can go up and put duct tape over it, and the air inside is at 16 pounds per square inch, which is what it is at sea level, and it's half of what you put in a bicycle tire. And and it's a place where they can be there and then tunnel out of that small crater so they can go to work and build whatever they're going to build.
Wow.
And so evidently they took it and were starting to work.
So you get the sense that this is us in progress of doing something, not something else that was there prior.
In that case,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Now I've done the alien things on the moon, and they're there. Yeah, they're there.
W- what do you think they are? Are they advanced? Are they, there's so many theories on this. Like I'm a big
Mm.
fan of people like Jacques Vallée and John Keel who
Yeah.
take kind of a
Hmm.
more um I don't know, almost like consciousness based uh interpretation of the phenomenon, but I'm also a big fan of people like Richard Dolan and his sort of like breakaway civilization hypothesis
Mm.
that there could be
Hmm.
very advanced pockets of ancient humans that we mistake as
Yeah.
alien, but they're actually us from the distant past, or maybe they're a group of modern people who have access to some kind of anomalous anti-gravity technologies or whatever. So there's so many interesting hypotheses with all of this stuff, but um yeah, so I guess let's start with that. What do
I
you think is
I
up
don't
there?
know if I should talk about this or not, but I think I will. Um, I was in El Paso one day and was getting out of the car to go into a restaurant,
Uh-huh.
And these two guys came up and they said, "You're Lyn Buchanan, aren't you?" And I thought, nobody's supposed to know. Maybe they've seen me on a podcast or something. And I said,
Yeah.
"Yeah." And they said, "We have a question to ask you." And I said, "Well, I don't really do targets for people. I do it for police and companies and all that, but not, you know." And they said, "No, we have a question. Um, we need to know who is doing the inspection and the investigation and study of the other wedge on the DNA chart."
Wow.
And I said, "Well, I don't know." And they said, "Well, can you find out for us?" And I immediately thought of Linda Moulton Howe because I mean,
Yeah.
she knows everything, and she's a good friend of mine. And so I said, "I'll see if I can find out." And anyway, we got to talking, and they said, "This guy, I don't know if they were lying,
Hmm.
so I have no proof of anything he said. Okay, it's what he told me." He said, when I guess you could call them the Anunnaki, I forget what he called them, left the earth way back then, they took human slaves with them who have been in slavery all these centuries on other planets. And he said there have been genetic changes. And he said, as we come back here as slaves now, some of us are able to escape. And he said, we're trying to fit into civilization, into the humans. And he said, we don't want control. We don't want politics. We don't want anything. We've been in slavery for thousands of years. We just want peace. We
Wow.
don't want to be known. We don't want anything else. Just live out our lives, not as slaves. And and he said that they have an underground railroad, what I would call an underground railroad, that helps them with it. But he said, we're very afraid of that other wedge in the DNA test. And so I went and asked Linda, and I said, is anybody studying that other thing? And she said, anybody in the government studying that? And she said, oh, yeah. And she named off four people right there. I mean, she knew the answer right there. And so you know. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but it was an incident that happened to me in a parking lot. So,
Wow. That is an angle I have can honestly say I've never considered. That if there
well, I
was
hadn't
this.
either.
Yeah.
I hadn't
Yeah.
either.
So are you so to make sure I followed. So you're saying that what we are perceiving to be an advanced presence could actually be humans that escaped from Anunnaki, or am I misinterpreting that?
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay. Okay.
Um, I'm saying that he told me that they come back here to to do the slave labor of the ETs that come back, like the humans that I saw at the
Yeah.
Mount Zeal and all that, doing their work and
Okay.
all that. And that
Oh,
every now
okay.
and then one of them was able to escape. But after all these centuries, they've changed, in some way. He didn't say how, but he said, there's been changes in us. And he said, we just don't want to be discovered. We don't want anything. We just want to live free and peace
Wild.
for the rest of our
Wild.
lives. And that's it. And
Thanks for I was going to say thanks for bringing the 8200 stuff back up, because there was a question I've been wanting to ask you on that. You said, I think on a podcast you did with Jeffrey Mishlove, that we had gotten feedback about one of the sites, but I don't think you ever elaborated on what you meant by that.
um, actually, it was sort of feedback.
Okay.
Skip called a friend of his who works there in Northern Australia,
Yeah.
and just was talking to him about it. Well, was talking to him about everything, and said, anything going on around there that is of note? And the guy said, nothing whatever. This is the most boring job I've ever had. If it weren't for all those UFOs flying around that mountain out there,
Oh,
we
yeah.
wouldn't do anything.
Yeah.
So that was what we took as feedback. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I do recall hearing that story.
Yeah.
Um, so like I mentioned, I am really into not even just like the contemporary sort of esoteric stuff, but the ancient esoteric stuff. Like I'm very
Mm.
into particularly like um, ancient Greek, Hermetic, Platonic type stuff. And with that, you start to get this metaphysical worldview that doesn't
Hmm.
sound that different from what we're talking about, except
Yeah.
for that these beings that they're often interacting with, these like, whether they're yogic sages or platonic sages, they conceive of these consciousnesses as spiritual, right? And then later
Yeah.
on in this sort of like Judeo-Christian milieu, we start to use words that we're all familiar with, like angels and demons and whatever, and it
Hmm.
changes depending on the cultural context. Have
Right.
you attempted to navigate spiritual sorts of consciousnesses? Do you have opinions on that, and if that's a a reality that can be accessed through this method?
Well, yeah, that's obviously of personal interest to me, especially after that one session that I
Yeah.
did. But and also, I am a Methodist minister. I'm
Oh,
a
really?
Methodist
I
preacher.
didn't know
Yeah,
that. I didn't know that.
and so the religion has always been important to me. And people ask me, how can you be Christian and a psychic too? And my honest answer is, if God gives you a gift and you refuse to use it, you've just hidden your light under a bushel, like Jesus said, and that's the sin.
Yeah,
If God gave you a gift, use it,
for sure.
do some good with it. So, anyway, yeah, I've done quite a bit on the spiritual realm, and I find it just true. I don't find anything exciting or awe-inspiring about it. We have a spirit within us, um, and um, I have come to believe in the possibility of reincarnation.
Yeah.
Believe very strongly in that possibility. I was asked to do a series of targets one time. Um, I didn't know I was following people through death and out the other side. And what I found was that some people go to what I would call heaven. Some people go to what I would call hell. Some people just quit existing, and some people reincarnate. And so the possibilities seem to be there. And the my my feeling has not been, that you're wrong if you believe this, that, and the other. My feeling has been that you're wrong if you believe that your belief is the only way.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear
Yeah,
that. Yeah, that's one of those like you find reincarnation in practically every spiritual tradition, mystical
yeah,
tradition up to a
yeah.
point. Even early Christianity. I mean, this was
Oh,
part of a
yeah,
lot of the early Christian beliefs. It's very present in ancient Greek, all the way
that's
back
right.
to Plato's Republic, the myth of There's this whole story about the afterlife and reincarnating and all it's it's all over. So yeah, that's always been something that I've had trouble discarding as well. That I take pretty seriously. This
Yeah,
idea that you know when you see these same, and that's really one of the things that opened my mind to a lot of psi stuff, out of body stuff, is that, hey, you look into yogic traditions, it's there. You look into ancient Greek
Mhm.
and Egyptian traditions, it's there. So it's really hard to see these things across cultures and then just sort of like eliminate them as if we know better than they did. So yeah, I have
One
no.
one of
Yeah, go
the
ahead.
one of the exercises at Monroe that they had for us was to go into the check unit, get, click in,
Hmm.
and go back through to see if you've had past lives.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
didn't make
I
it
don't
to
know if
that.
they do that anymore, but
Yeah, maybe. And they have so many different retreats, and I've only done
oh, yeah. Huh.
Gateway, so who knows what they do in some of the. But that sounds like something they would do for sure.
Yeah.
Um, what haven't we talked? Well, one of the things I really
Mhm.
wanted to ask you about, and I get that maybe navigating this might require generalities, but um, I have such a hard time believing that post mid '90s, uh, the government, three-letter agencies, the intelligence realm just wash their hands of psi,
Yeah.
wash their hands of
Mhm.
remote viewing, and even some of the other things we didn't talk about, like you talk about remote influencing, we talk about other PK related things that you
Oh, yeah.
s-
Mhm.
saw or know
Yeah.
existed during your time in the military. One
As
of the
far as the
Go
end
ahead.
of the unit, I have some pat answers that I give everyone, okay? One is when you retire, they quit telling you secrets.
Hmm.
So I don't know. Okay. The other is one of the others is that I hope they really didn't um, disband the whole thing. I hope it just once again went under an eighth name that nobody knew about because it went through seven different times when it was disbanded completely, and the next day we would go back to work and say, "Oh, you're in a different project now," and so I'm hoping they didn't disband it because we did a lot of good, and the government would be stupid to disband it. But then that brings up the question: does our government ever do anything stupid? And I know the answer. That's one I know the answer to.
Right, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Um, one of the popular theories, of course, is, well, one theory, and I think Skip Atwater said something to this effect on a podcast. I think he said something to the effect of he was aware of other similar projects and other agencies that, and
Yeah.
almost like that almost like your project was sort of like the sacrificial lamb that was publicly
I
like.
I firmly believe that. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
Very interesting. The
Yeah.
other.
I
Yeah, go
think
ahead.
we were there to be thrown to the wolves if ever it came out. Yeah.
Hmm. Do you have any sense of why that was, why you guys?
To protect the deeper projects.
Hmm.
Um, One thing we were never allowed to do active mental work. Active mental work like PK or influencing or anything like that. There was a strict, I mean, strict, really strict law against it. We were never allowed to uh, remote view U.S. citizens without congressional approval, meeting all the requirements of Presidential Order 12333. And so, you know, was somebody else doing it? I would think so.
Yeah.
One time when I was first there, uh, they knew General Stubblebine had told Brian, the director, that I had been doing PK. And so Brian called me in and he said, "We don't do that here. We don't do active mental work." And he read me the riot act on it. Afterwards, I was out in the desk area, setting up my desk and all. Skip came by and he said, I guess Brian told you that we don't do that kind of work here. And I said, yeah. And he said, absolutely true. We don't do that kind of work here.
Hmm.
and walked off.
Hmm.
And at that point, I've thought many times I could remote view it if they are doing PK and influencing and all that. And I keep thinking, do I really want to stick my hand into that hornet's nest? I don't think so.
Yeah.
You know, if they're doing it, I don't need to know. Yeah.
Yeah, that starts to get into the realm of the sort of black arts a bit.
Oh yeah.
When
Yeah.
you start, I mean, of course, it's been speculated. Could you? And this is something that I believe is in. I don't know if it's a DIA document, but I remember when I was doing research for a video I put out a while ago. One of the justifications for having this unit existing, they lay out all the things that they're worried that the Soviets are doing, and one of
Oh
them
yeah.
is like essentially like remote assassinations, like remote psychic
Yeah.
assassination. And
The Russians called it Dolny Gipnos,
hmm.
which is remote hypnosis. And they were evidently extremely good at it.
And I of course don't know, but if I'm a skeptic sitting here hearing that, I'd be like, come on, like if you could just remotely kill someone that easily, there'd be world leaders' bodies just dropping left and right. It can't be possible. What would your
No,
retort to that be?
it's possible. I want to clear up one thing, okay?
Yeah.
I did kill the computers. I did not kill the goat.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah.
That was another sergeant who killed the goat. I didn't do it. The movie shows Lynn Cassidy killing the goat. That wasn't me. Okay.
But this did happen.
Yeah, it happened. Yeah. Mhm.
Do you think you need to be near the target to have that kind of an impact? Or wow.
No. Um, and the thing is, it's frighteningly easy to do.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is frightening. And it does leave me with the question of what if the other thing that just really strains the imagination is that if this is happening and if there is this whole covert world of psi operations, not psyops in the psychological way, but
Yeah.
psi, is that what if there is just a whole hidden realm of psychic warfare happening behind the scenes all the time that the public has no
Yeah.
idea about?
Well, the public doesn't need to know.
Yeah.
that brings up a point. Okay. Um, they say, "Oh, you don't have a need to know," right? And somebody says, "Well, I do need to know." Okay. Here again, you've got parts of speech. I need to know is a verb. I need to know it. When they say you don't have a need to know, that's a noun.
Hmm.
Okay. The noun is a noun phrase. Need to know. Okay. A need to know is a status saying that the government has a need for you to know something.
Right.
So when they say you don't have a need to know, they're not talking about your need at all. They don't care about your need.
Right.
They're saying the government doesn't have a need to know that we're going to grant you because we need for you to know.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Those are some fun semantics.
Yeah.
So the other route that you always hear about this, and there seems to be some evidence for, is that the government proper sort of does wash their hands of it, and it goes into the private realm. And
Oh,
there's like
yeah.
some, I mean, you can see there's correspondence on archive.org with SAIC,
Yeah. Mhm.
stuff like that.
Well, when they announced that they were going to disband the Stargate unit, um, I was told that they have a way to civilianize it and farm it out to a civilian company, like they're doing with the uh, ET material, like they're doing with the Mars projects and all this. You put it out to a civilian corporation, classify it so that they can't talk about it, and then anybody comes to the government, and the government says we're not doing that.
Right.
You know, so
Yeah.
it's a way to get away from the Freedom of Information Act.
It's very convenient. It's very
Yeah.
convenient. Um, do you think that I mean, we're in deep in the realm of speculation, but well, okay, so to take it slightly out of the realm of speculation, have you by chance seen the UFO whistleblower Jake Barber and what he's been saying about psionics?
No, I haven't.
Oh, really? I think you would find this very fascinating. So
Yeah,
he's a
I
former
I guess about 4 years ago, I cut off the TV. I've been writing books. I've been studying. I've been doing other stuff, and I'm virtually totally unaware of what's going on in the world in
gotcha.
the world outside my horizon. Yeah.
Well, let me spin a yarn for you, and I'll leave this out
Okay.
here as a tempting rabbit hole for you to follow up on. So this former tier one operator, Jake Barber, Air Force guy, comes public and does a big interview and says that he was personally involved in crash retrieval. So,
Hmm.
unbeknownst to him, like he would be told, "Hey, you got to go pick something with your helicopter out
Yeah.
here." Did this hundreds and hundreds of times. He had a couple of occasions that where those targets ended up being these like HVT, high value targets that were when he arrived at them, it was extremely obvious that they were anomalous. They were not
I've been to
ours.
one of those. I've been to one of those places and seen them. Yeah. Hmm.
Really, really.
Yeah.
Um, so I want to hear that. But to finish that story, he says that there was essentially, he learned later, a whole technique for basically summoning these things. And part of the
Hmm.
technique is what he called psionic, meaning that there was a team of guys basically who could put out a sort of psychic call to make these
Yeah.
things show up. And then these aerospace contractors, basically, all the big ones or the obvious ones, apparently, had protocols for either inviting or compelling these things to land so that they could take them. Um, so Barber, by blowing the whistle on this, is he was saying that he wants to basically have disclosure through a private version of showing, hey, me with a team of psionic guys can actually do this exact same thing, and
Yeah.
therefore we
Uh-huh.
don't need people to come forward from these companies because I can show you that we can do this. So
Hmm.
he, up until recently, apparently this just ended and everybody's kind of like scratching their head on this because we didn't exactly get concrete disclosure out of their project, but
Yeah.
they did do this apparently to some degree. Um, so yeah, if this is all new to you, then I'll definitely share the links with you. But you said you've been at one of these sites. Is this something you can?
Um, I was at a. I was away on a mission one time. Okay, and I was at this place, and I was in the cafeteria, and I looked up, and here was an army buddy I knew years and years and years ago. He said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I can't tell you." I said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "Well, I can't tell you." And so we got to talking, and he finally said, "What's your clearance?" Now, this was after my military service.
Mhm.
Okay. After my military service, my clearance went sky high. Um, my clearance in the military service, the top I had was top secret. Um, it went to secret while we were in the remote viewing unit. When I got out, I got a job that gave me TS ESI PSYOP, which is TS top secret, ESI is extremely sensitive information. SIOP is SIOP, Strategic Integrated Operational Program. And that's rarely ever given to anybody.
Wow.
And what it says is you have extremely sensitive information, top secret, at the top secret level, and you're cleared for any government agency. Okay. And so I was doing some special work, but oh, forget where I was going with this. Oh, I was at this installation, and I I let him know that, and he said, "Well, maybe I can tell you," and so he uh, had me checked, and they verified my clearance, and so he took me to where he worked, and it was his hangar where they had mid-air collisions, and there was airplane junk all over the place. They were putting the pieces back together again, and we were walking along through this hangar, and there was this one pile of debris there, and there was a control panel in it. This goes off on another thing. I had had a previous abduction,
Oh,
okay,
really?
before going into service. And before going into service the second time, I had had this abduction. And I had had a chance to see the control panel of the UFO. And as we walked past it, I said, "That's out of a UFO." And it just echoed in that chamber. This this colonel, I think he was a captain. This captain came running out of an office and just gave me the bum's rush out of there. And but I mean, I recognized it for what it is because I had seen it before,
Wow.
and so that's why that thing of putting mid-air collisions back together became so
Mm.
secret in that place because they were also having mid-air collisions with UFOs. Yeah,
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, this is one of the things that you hear about in some of these like testimonies before Congress that have been going on is that,
yeah,
you have like Ryan Graves who's this fighter pilot who's come forward and
yeah,
said, "We would encounter these things all the time. And
yeah.
we've come very close to colliding with things numerous times."
Hmm.
And it sounds like they have. It sounds like that from what you're
Yeah.
saying, they have collided with these things. I've got to ask, what did this control panel look like?
Um, it looks like an impression, indentation of a hand. Okay,
Mm,
with excuse me, with holes in the board, and then some holes going out to the side, and you control the thing by having your hand there, and the holes out to the side have sort of indicator lights in them, and if you get off, if something goes awry, the light works out toward the edge. And so then you have to use those holes to get the light back toward the center before you're stabilized again and all that. And that seems to be the way it was on, well, that's the way it was on the ship that where I was abducted. Yeah.
wow. Well, now I've got to ask too about that experience. What if you feel open to sharing that? I would love to hear that story.
I was a Methodist minister in an East Texas town, tiny little town, and the parsonage was a good quarter of a mile off the road, off the highway. And one night, uh, the Methodists move their ministers almost every year to new churches. So they rotate them
Okay.
and called circuit riders. And this is before you get good enough to have a church where you're stabilized at. And so my family had already moved, and I was packing up the house, and had everything in the U-Haul. And I put out a pallet and laid down on the floor in the living room, and I heard something land in the backyard, and it sounded not unlike a helicopter, but you could tell it wasn't a helicopter.
Hmm.
So I started to get up and go see what it was, and I couldn't move. And I was wide awake. I mean, this was not a dream or anything like that. I was wide awake. I was frozen. I couldn't move. And I heard somebody coming through the grass around the side of the house to look into the front room window. The next thing I knew, I was sitting in a row of people. There was this old woman beside me, and a couple of empty seats and a window. And there was a row of people already filled up behind. And whenever I fly, I don't like being in enclosed places.
Yeah.
So I always get a window seat on the plane. And so this tall, extremely pale being came by, just muscled up like Arnold Schwarzenegger
Oh,
and all that.
really? Okay.
And so I said, "Excuse me, can I sit by the window?" And he got this look of fear on his face. I mean, absolute terror that somebody had come to because everybody was just frozen. And so he turned running out of the room. Pretty soon, a little gray with three of these big, tall, white, uh, muscled up guys came, kind of huddled behind this little bitty gray. And the gray started talking to me, and I started sort of phasing out, but I'd catch myself every time. And so finally, the gray said, "Well, you know, come with me." And so he took me up front. He was the pilot, and the other guys got to work with the equipment or whatever it was. And he would lift off, sit down somewhere. They would go out, and evidently they were picking up people, filling up the thing. And he was he was very free with the information, everything else.
Wow.
And we talked, very friendly. And so anyway, he said, "Okay, there's a long jump," and so this long jump, we left the Earth, and there was just nothing outside the window and all that. You know, darkness, stars you could see. And so he was working this thing, and I said, "Can I try that?" He said, "No, your hands are too small," and I have very large hands.
Hmm.
So he had me put my hand up. He put his hand up on mine, and they were basically the same size. Now I was kneeling down at the console. He was standing, and we were eye level. Okay. And so, but his hands were my size. So he said, "Well, I'll let you try it." So he let me try it, and he stood over me like, "You're, you know, I'm going to catch you if you start crashing us." And he was showing me how the thing worked and all that. And when we got to wherever it was, well, he didn't let me do that for very long, you know. And when we got to wherever we were going, um, they landed. There were two other crafts already landed, and there were people filing in and out to the different crafts. And came our turn, and he had me go sit down with the people. And as we filed out, he grabbed me and he said, "You don't want to go up there where they're going." They went up this hill to a pavilion. It's very dark, but very warm. And and from the sounds that came out of that pavilion, I'm glad he stopped me. But we sat on the hillside here, um, just talking and all. This is all in Jim Mars's book, Alien Agenda, by the way.
Okay.
Jim got the whole story. And so at one point he said, I've got somebody you need to talk to. And he went and got this other gray that came up, sat down on the hill beside me, and put his hand up. And he said, put your hand up. When I did, he put his hand on the back of mine and then started talking to me. And to this day, I still don't remember what it was,
Oh
you
no.
know.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, the next thing I knew, the people were coming down from that pavilion. I fell back in line with them. And I finally remembered years later that when I got back on, I turned to the gray and I said, I would like to remember this. And he said, you won't. The next morning, I found myself at the back window of the house looking out at the ground. I had no idea. I thought I must have been sleepwalking, totally confused, all this other stuff. And so I just wandered around this empty house. And finally, I remembered, oh, yeah, I'm moving today.
Yeah.
So I rolled up the little pallet, threw it into the U-Haul, and drove off. And I had the feeling I'd forgotten something. For the next 25 years, it got worse and worse and worse. And I couldn't leave the house without going back and checking. What have I forgotten? I couldn't, never forgot anything, you know.
Yeah.
But one day we were headed for church on a Sunday. I was already in the military remote viewing unit. And I kept going back and back. And my wife finally just started picking at me. She said, did you check the basement? I said, I checked the basement. Did you check the kitchen? I checked. She said, did you check the backyard?
Mm.
And when she said that, the whole thing came back, except what that second said person said to me. And and it all came flooding back. I didn't believe it. I thought this is total fantasy. It's crazy. I was never abducted. And and so I mean, I sat down on the front steps. I just didn't know what to do and all that.
Yeah.
And I still didn't believe it. So the next day, Monday, I went to the military unit and I gave them some coordinates. And I
Okay.
said, it's an event. Describe the event. They all described it.
Wow.
And so um, I still didn't believe it. I thought, well, telepathic overlay. They're just
Right.
my imagination is overruling their viewing. You know,
Hmm.
um, about 2 or 3 weeks later, I found that Ed seemed to have tattled on me to whoever he was working with,
Mm.
and I was up at the DIA and headed toward the director's office, and two quote men in black stepped out in the hallway, pointed in. I went in, sat down in front of the interrogator. The men in black is professional interrogator and a person from the unit that hired the professional interrogator and has briefed him on what to do. And that person sits over to one side and is never supposed to say anything while the interrogator interrogates. And so he asked me a whole bunch of questions, and I thought, they're trying to see if I'm crazy.
Yeah.
But they never ask about anything except the control panel.
Wow.
And so the way the interrogator asks it, he'll have about 10 or 15 questions. He'll rotate them back and forth and repeat them in different ways to see if you trip yourself up. And so about the third time he asked me on this, I said, no, let me explain. And I explained it. And the guy over to the left over there slapped his knee and he said, so that's it. Now they're never supposed to say a word. And I looked at the interrogator And I realized he's got one and doesn't know how to fly it. And I grinned. And the interrogator, of course, is trained. They never make a response of any kind. But his ears just suddenly got beet red. And within 15 seconds, both of them were up and gone out of the room. I was sitting there by myself.
Wow.
And I thought, maybe it's real, you know?
Wow.
Well, it was about, I guess, close to a little over half a year later. I was out at this facility, met my old Army buddy, and walked through that hangar, and there it was. And I had to admit myself, I was abducted.
That's
It actually
wild.
happened. Um, it was years later, after I got out of service, that I found this hypnotherapist
Yeah.
who I knew did not believe in UFOs. That was one of my criteria. And so wouldn't take it and run and let his pollution affect me. And he put me through the routine, and come to find out, this is in Jim's book. Um, they needed pilots, and I had shown that my hands were good and I was capable of doing it. And they had offered me a job. And I said, well, I'll go, get my family. And he said, no, you can't, you know. And I said, well, then I won't take it. You know? And that's,
Wow.
I got back on the, fell in line, got back on the ship. He said, well, you won't remember it. But after that time, when my wife said, did you check the backyard and all that came back?
Yeah.
I have never once since left the house and felt like I'd forgotten something.
Well, my friend, I think we saved the best, wildest tale for last. Unless you've got something left in the tank. That's
That's
even
a wild one, isn't
yeah.
it? But
Yeah.
anyway, that's my abduction experience, and
Wow.
it did take me 25 years before it all came back. I had no recollection, no even thought, and in fact, I really kind of doubted the whole alien abduction stories
Sure.
anyway. You know,
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's just like all this other stuff, right? I mean, it's like you can't believe remote viewing is real, then you remote view. You can't believe out of body experiences are real, and then you have an out of body
and then
experience. And here I'm sitting. As far as I know, I've never been abducted. Maybe I was one of the anesthetized, mind wiped people. But as far as
I
I
have no
know,
idea. Yeah.
right? Like, yeah, man. Wow.
But I mean, the last thing I wanted was to believe that I had been abducted. I just absolutely not.
Yeah. And that's something you find, right? Like that. A lot of times people who are the victims of abduction, if you want to call it that, are not people who want to be. And that's one of the
No.
things that oh, why am I drawing a blank on his name? The famous psychiatrist from Harvard who John Mack, like that's one of the
Oh
things
yeah,
that
yeah.
that convinced
Uh,
him. It's like these people are not like attention seeking nutcases that are sharing these abduction stories. Like these people really had an experience. Um, what do you want to leave people with, Lynn? Do you want to leave people with that, or do you want to?
um, I'm not surprised too much by what the human mind can do anymore, but I will never quit being amazed by it. The human mind, we've been at the remote viewing for what, over 40 years now. We've gotten it down to where we can do things that appear to be magic, total magic. Um, draw me the floor plans of a building. In fact, one of my students went into a contest, and we called it the Joe McMonagle contest for IRVA.
Mhm.
IRVA is having their meeting here, their conference here the first week in September, and there's still
Oh,
openings, by the way.
okay.
Go to irva.org and and come to it. Yeah.
Cool. Cool.
But after all of this time, we're still in kindergarten. What you can do with the human mind is just beyond amazing. And we've got people who are fighting against it. We've got people who don't care about it. And we've got people who are training now, and they're doing miraculous things, bringing missing kids home, helping bring missing kids home, missing soldiers, captured soldiers, winning big time at the casinos, things like this. Okay. Um, and it's a human ability that seems to be inherent to the human nature. We've never found anybody who can't do it. We have found many people who won't do it for religious reasons or upbringing or fear or whatever. But the future that's out there is just phenomenal. Um, I was telling you before about the four different categories of ETs. Did I tell you about that one?
Actually, no, I don't think you did.
Oh, that'll be for another time or
Okay.
something. I
Okay.
don't know.
Yeah.
No, the I was asked to do a paper on compare and contrast human psychic abilities with ET psychic abilities. Well, there's not us and them. There's us and them and them and them and them and them and them and them.
Yeah.
And so I was given access to grudge papers, blue book papers, other papers that are not generally known to the public and all that of actual ET abductions and experiences and all that. And I was able to separate the ETs psychically into four categories: friends and enemies. In each one of those categories, you have those who are more psychic than we are and those who are equally or less psychic than we are. The friendly ones who are equal or less psychic than we are, they're here for trade. The unfriendly ones don't come here except by mistake or accident or whatever. Those who are more psychic than we are and enemies just want us wiped off the planet. They want us dead, period.
Hmm.
The friendly ones who are more psychic than we are want us to develop our psychic abilities. And I understood the two, equal or less. I didn't understand the motivation for the other two, the ones who are more psychic. And one wanted incident that I came across in all these papers. There were these guys standing at the lake, and they saw this UFO coming over the lake, and they were standing there at the shore looking up at it, and it came right over them. It stopped, and it abducted them. And so all of a sudden, I think from other things I had read, it dawned on me they are more psychic than we are, can control our minds and all this, but they don't have any range.
Hmm.
With the remote viewing, we can see across space and time like we can look across a room. And when we get into space, if we have developed our minds to that ability, we are going to be a power in the universe. That's why our friends want us to do it
Hmm.
and stay friends with them.
Right.
That's why the enemies want us wiped out.
Wow.
And that was the paper I turned in, and it got classified. It got It's probably in that warehouse of Indiana Jones,
Right.
at
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
the end of the Indiana
Smithsonian.
Jones movie.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that was the paper I wrote and found out from all of the information I had been given. from those
Wow.
different projects. Yeah.
Well,
And
this has been a
so
yeah.
what I would say to people is you have the ability. On a religious sense, if God gave you the ability, use it. Don't hide your light under a bushel. On the real physical sense, we are going into space. You better be ready for it. Okay. Because there are people who don't want us out there.
Wow. Wow. Well, this has
So
been a
anyway,
yeah,
that's the message I would leave. Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful. This has been an absolutely fun, wild one. Thank you so much for sharing all of these stories. Thank you so much for everything you've done for remote viewing, for Psy, for I mean, one of the things, I got to imagine that's on your mind is like how is the legacy of this going to continue moving forward, and
Oh yeah.
what is the destiny of the human mind, what is the horizon of the human mind, what is it capable of, and people like
Yeah.
you are pushing that forward, my friend.
I'm trying. Yeah. And I realize when I tell some of these events that happened to me that if I were just a person off the street, I would absolutely not believe them. And yet, like you said about the Monroe Institute thing, when it happens to you, you can no longer deny it.
Right. Yeah.